Welcome to the Primo's Musings podcast.
Good evening. This is Shri here, along with my son Aneesh. Aneesh, how are you?
Doing good.
All right. So yesterday I did the NFC East with some of my friends, but today we turned the focus on to the Patriots. I know we did one last year. We did one with predictions, but this year we're going to stay away from predictions because this is a new season with a new quarterback and a new coach. So let's dive right into it. Here are the four things I do want to cover. One, I wanted to talk about how the Patriots did in the draft. I know it's been a while. Then number two, at least look forward to. I don't think they really picked someone of value, but we will talk about who they picked in the during the after the draft, and then we can quickly dive into the Patriots' outlook for the season. And before that, we can even talk about who should start as quarterback, and then maybe generally we can talk about AFC East in general on who you think will win the division. Okay.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. Let's. I want to hear your thoughts on the draft. I think Amit Uncle and I myself did a draft recap, and we already gave our thoughts. But I wanted to hear your thoughts about what they did in the first round and the next few rounds. At least we can touch upon some of the players that will make an impact this year.
Yeah, so I think I really like the Drake Maye pick, of course. Going into the year, everyone knew that Pats are going to need to draft a quarterback, so it's just a question of Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams, or Drake Maye. I think ultimately Maye is the quarterback that the Pats wanted. He fell to them at 3, and they took him. And then I also want to go along with liking Mayo's picks in the next couple of rounds, getting Jalen Polk in the second, and then getting Javon Baker in the fourth. I think a key point of emphasis for the Pats the last couple of years was their lack of weapons at receiver. You know, they had Ramondre Stevenson and had a good year until he got hurt. He had a pretty battered O-line, and then obviously the ever-reliable Hunter Henry, but they didn't really seem to have a receiver that could get adequate separation. Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL at the beginning of last year. Demario Douglas was still a rookie and had some growing pains, and Kayshon Boutte never seemed to really pan out. And then, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster was abysmal last year, coming off the injury. And Tyquan Thornton has been utterly a disappointment ever since he got drafted a couple years ago. So getting those two receivers was very important. And then I think getting some offensive line help with Caden Wallace from Penn State. I don't think he's projected to be a starter, but it's a good bench piece. Hopefully he can develop for the next couple years. And then getting Joe Milton as kind of that secondary backup quarterback. I think he's going to be the third string quarterback on this roster after they just cut Bailey Zappi. I think he's going to be good for some gadget plays. He's still very raw as an athlete, and he can throw the ball quite far, but he doesn't seem to have the mechanics down. So there's a reason why he dropped to the 6th round. But yeah, that's what I think so far. I think they had a pretty good draft. They mostly went offense, which is exactly what they needed. Their defense didn't really need too much help. So I'm excited to see what it has going forward in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I know we were talking about the offense, but one of the losses the Patriots had is that they just traded away Matthew Judon to the Falcons. And I think that's definitely going to impact. I do want to hear your thoughts on. I still think the defense is pretty good, but your thoughts on what the defense needs to do, because the offense is going to go through some growing pains, and we'll get to the quarterback finally. But your thoughts on how the defense is going to adjust. I know they're going on the backside. They're going to get Gonzalez back. That's a good point. That's a good thing. But and then I think Barmore is still not available.
Yeah, he has blood clotting, so he's on the PUP list. So he'll be out for at least 4 weeks.
It'll be exactly.
Also, Bourne's on that list, so they're not going to have their top receiver from last year.
Yep.
Hopefully, Polk and Baker can pick up the slack. Douglas coming back, and they also have KJ Osborne. So I think in terms of defensively, losing Judon was a huge blow. I think when it first happened, I was very disappointed by the fact that Mayo essentially let our best defensive player go for a bag of chips. It was just a 3rd-round pick from the Falcons. I think ultimately for this team, the way that it's structured, they're 100% in rebuild mode. Having a 32-year-old defensive end coming off a bicep injury might not be the best way to go towards a rebuild. So I think at least getting something for him, considering that they didn't really want to pay him the money that he thought he was worth. Is probably going to hurt them this year, but I think long term it works out best. They still have a lot of young players. Christian Gonzalez coming back from injury. Still have Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, and Alex Austin in the secondary, and as well as Jarrell Peppers and Kyle Duggar. So I think their secondary is very strong. My issue is just how are they going to get pressure on the quarterback without Judon kind of drawing the attention. Barmore is going to be out for a couple weeks. I really expect Dietrich Wise, Keon White, and then Jelani Tavai and Jawan Bentley to really carry the load there in the middle of that front seven. I think they have really doesn't seem to be many issues on that defensive end. They were a top 10 defense last year without Judon and Gonzalez for 90% of the year. So I think this year, at least getting Gonzalez back, I'm interested to see how it works out for them. But ultimately, if the defense can't find a way to get a bunch of turnovers and kind of force their opponents to make mistakes, put them in third and long situations, I don't think this team is going to be very good to begin the year, but it could go from bad to worse if the defense doesn't do its job.
Okay. I agree with you. But here's the next question, because we were watching a little bit of the preseason after Brissett got hurt. May came in, but he played with the backup offensive line, which really made me wonder why Mayo would put someone who's your franchise quarterback there. I think tomorrow they've scheduled an 8:30 a.m. press conference where Mayo is probably going to address the quarterback, who's going to be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. I personally think, even though Drake Maye has indeed outplayed Brissett, and they have Milton at number 3, but looks like May will probably be the backup to Brissett from all the things I've been hearing. And I actually think that's the right idea. A lot of people do want to have May start, but I've heard enough bad things that go wrong. Even as a great quarterback as Peyton Manning, who was a number 1 pick and who's a Hall of Famer, he had his growing pains even in year number 1. So especially when you have a very weak offensive line. So I would think Brissett would probably be the starter, even though May did outplay him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I have to agree. I think Brissett will start not because he's better than Drake Maye, simply because the offensive line is in shambles and you can't have your franchise guy getting hurt. I think a lot of people will try to go back towards 2021 when the Pats drafted Mac Jones and say, well, he outplayed Cam Newton, who was a veteran. He started. Well, the Patriots had a very good offensive line that year. So I think at that point, when Mac Jones was outplaying Cam, it made sense for Mac to start because he was simply better than Cam and he had a good offensive line. The problem is, even though Drake is better than Brissett right now, it doesn't make much sense to put him behind a makeshift O-line that doesn't have an answer at left tackle. They don't have an answer at right tackle. Their starting left guard, Cole Strange, is hurt. They literally have David Andrews at center, and City So also suffered an injury at the right guard position. So putting him behind a bunch of journeymen or people who are very inexperienced is just not the way you want the season to go. And I think we really learned it with Mac Jones in years 2 and 3. He got put behind a very bad offensive line and it completely shattered his confidence. And he would start throwing off his back foot a lot because he thought pressure was coming every single down. And even when he had a clean pocket, he wouldn't step into his throws. It led to a lot of really bad off-platform picks. Same thing happened with Zappy last year too. So I think it's best they put Drake Maye on the bench, let Brissett start. If the offensive line somehow holds up the first couple of weeks, maybe then you can think about putting Drake Maye in. But I think right now this year is going to be a tank year. I think you just put Brissett in. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt. And I honestly think if you go through like 5-6 games and the Pats are 1-5, 0-6, and the offensive line is still really bad, and Brissett goes down for an injury, I would put Joe Milton in instead. I think you can't risk Drake Maye. You're not competing for a playoff spot. You're not competing for the division. There's no point in getting him hurt. Just ride out the season, get a good pick, get some offensive line help. You have $95 million cap next year. Use it.
Well, I think if the season does go south, I agree with you that they will not start Drake Maye, but I also don't think Milton gets the nod, and I'll tell you why. By the 5th or 6th week, you will have a bunch of backup quarterbacks in the league available. So the Patriots may actually go for some veteran quarterback play to bring them in. uh, instead of starting Milton or even May. And that's the way I feel about it, because I think you can't even Milton. He hasn't proven he can still throw the ball. I mean, he's a gadget guy, so they probably don't want to risk even Milton, even though he's not as good as May or Brissett.
I can see
So
that too.
yeah, so that's where we are with the Patriots. When I looked at the 53-man roster today, obviously we don't have Bourne, but I do think that if Bourne does indeed come back, that may be tough. If I don't know the way Baker played in the preseason, he wasn't too good, but he's a playmaker. Um, they may probably drop Rager, and
Rager
then
just got cut.
he just got cut
Yeah,
too. Okay, there you
he's
go.
gone.
So um, that's the initial 53-man he was there, but I think looks like he got cut.
He got cut because they want to make room for more of their practice squad additions.
Yeah,
But
and
I
then
think I'm surprised Tyquan Thornton made the roster. He hasn't shown
well, I
anything.
think they call him the X receiver,
Yeah,
right?
but he has no separation and he weighs nothing, so he can't win jump balls.
Yeah,
His whole thing is speed, but his route running is really bad. So
yeah. The
unless he
only good
improves that,
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, the only good thing is, like, from a defensive standpoint, Barmore has been placed on the reserve non-football injury list, so that's a good sign that he could be back too soon. So um, I think that's where we are in terms of the Patriots. And I think I'll mention one more, the kicker. I think Rylan. I was actually telling um, the uh, uh, the guys in the NFC, especially the Giants, Mr. Steve. I told him, like, thanks to the fact that Ryland missed that field goal against the Giants, which would have tied the game last year,
We have Drake Maye,
we got Drake Maye,
and they
so
did. So
yeah. So I do think that that's a thing. That's why Josh Sly made the
Joey
roster
Slye, yeah.
and Ryland didn't make the roster. All right, let's turn the page, because I did want to quickly. I know we're not going to go game by game. We Patriots were 4-13 last year. Realistically, with Brissett starting, and the fact that if Brissett plays the entire 17-game season, or if Brissett goes down and they bring a quarterback, um, not start Drake May in year one, what do you think would be the realistic record for the Patriots?
I think if Brissett plays the whole year, I'll say 2-15, 3-14. And that's optimistically. I think they could go in a scenario where they win one game. This schedule they have is ridiculous. They have Bengals on the road to start the year. Their entire division is very good, so that's probably 6 losses right there. They have to also play. I want to just take a look at their schedule. So they have to play the Bills twice, of course, the Dolphins twice, of course, and the Jets twice, of course. So that's going to be, I think, 6 losses. And then they play the Seahawks week 2. That's probably a loss. They play the entire NFC West. So Niners, definitely a loss. Rams, probably a loss. Cardinals, maybe they can sneak one out. And then they also play the Bears in Soldier Field. I don't think that's going to be favorable for them. I think if I look at their schedule right now, I think they could maybe beat the Titans. I think they can maybe beat the Cardinals. Maybe they can beat the Chargers, depending on how bad Herbert's receiver help is. I don't see any real, confident, oh, they're going to win this game on this schedule. I see a lot of, they're probably going to lose. Let's see how much they lose by. I think they're scheduled to start off the year. You have Bengals, who would have made the playoffs if Burrow was healthy. Seahawks, who have some great offensive weapons. Niners, who just won the NFC. Jets, who have Rodgers back. Dolphins, who have owned the Patriots the last couple of years. Texans, who have Stroud. Jags in London. That's literally the Jags' home. Jets again. Titans, Bears. This schedule is not easy for a really bad team. So I'm gonna say 3-14. If Brissett goes the whole way. But if something happens and the O line shores up and Brissett maybe is underperforming and they think it's comfortable enough to bring in May, then I maybe think they can get 4 to 5 wins. I think that's probably their cap. And I think if Brissett gets hurt and they bring in another quarterback, I think the message is going to be just tank, because they don't want to ruin draft position, especially with the team they have.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. I think last year I went on the limb and called it 12-5 season. I did think that Mac Jones would have rebounded, but it didn't go the way we thought. Um, so I do think that um, you know they. I realistically think maybe I said 6 games initially when I talked to the NFC guys yesterday, but I realistically think if Brissett plays the whole year, I think it's maybe 5 wins, and if the offensive line is better, maybe he gets a couple more. But I don't see this more than 6 games and 6 to 7 games. I think they will finish at the bottom of the AFC East again. But I do think that Kraft, when you look at, it's a new coach, it's a new quarterback, it's a new system. So I think they do have a run. I almost think they have like a 2 to 3 year runway, um, unlike other teams. I think Kraft's always thought about stability, so I don't think they will do anything because they can get some new picks from the next time. All I want them is to play hard this year. All right. Let's quickly pivot to the rest of the AFC East because I did want to combine this podcast with that. Uh, who do you think is going to let's go team by team. Okay, Jets. Let's start with the Jets. Aaron Rodgers coming back. He got hurt without even uh, maybe like 4 plays last year. The Jets' defense is really solid. Their offensive line is better. And then they got all skill position players. So, what is the Jets' upside this time? And then we could also talk about the Bills after that because I know they lost Stephon Diggs, but they did pick up another wide receiver in the draft. And then there's always Miami with Tyreek Hill and Tua. What do you think about all the other 3 teams?
I think this is the Jets' division to lose, actually. And I know that sucks as a Patriots fan who very deeply dislikes the Jets. But I think if Rodgers stays healthy, they have a top five, arguably a top five defense in the league. They have Garrett Wilson, who is an extremely profound wide receiver. They have Brees Hall, and they also revamped their offensive line this offseason, which was the main reason why Rodgers got hurt. And I think if they had, I think it was 7 wins last year with Zach Wilson and how bad he is, I think they can get to 12 wins, maybe 13. I don't think there's really a game you can look at and say, oh, the Jets are 100% losing this game if Rodgers is at the helm and the offensive line shores up. I think maybe that week 1 against the Niners, that's going to be a test. I think if the Jets can go into San Francisco, I believe it is.
Yep.
Unless it's in MetLife. Let me just double check.
Yeah, but I do think that whether they play on the road or here, Rodgers has actually played in 40.
Yeah, that's like his home.
Because that's like AFC, but because he was in the NFC. So I do think that the Jets 12. Yeah, I think when I went, because they play the same division that the Patriots play, I feel that I think the Jets. The Jets. I would say schedule is actually not that easy. So I think maybe 11 to 12 games. I think
they'll get 12.
I would go under the 12, but that's where I see the Jets. And it's exciting for them. I think they have the quarterback, and let's see if they can make some noise. As far as the Bills, they've always been the bridesmaid to Kansas City. They had a chance to tie the game in I think the AFC divisional round.
Missed the field
and
goal.
They missed the field goal wide right. It's the 2 famous words heard in Buffalo's history. And what do you think with Stephon Diggs gone? What do you think Josh Allen's chances and the Bills' chances are?
I think they'll still be very similar to where they were last year. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, they lost Diggs. Diggs really was a nobody for the last 5-6 weeks of the regular season. He really didn't do much. And he was kind of a non-factor against Pittsburgh in the wild card game. And he also had a big drop against Kansas City that could have put them down the field late in the game. So I think losing Diggs is not the worst thing in the world for the Bills. I know when Josh Allen started, he wasn't the greatest quarterback in Buffalo, and then Diggs kind of elevated him. But I now think he's at that point where he's a top 3 quarterback in the league, and it doesn't really matter who his weapons are. I think he can make plays with his feet. He can roll out of the pocket. He's extremely mobile. And I think they got Keon Coleman in the draft, who's a very good receiver from Florida State. They also have Curtis Samuel that they got. So I think they have the weapons. They still have Kincaid, who's a very good tight end. They have James Cook, who's an excellent running back behind Josh Allen. So I think the Bills will be fine. I think if the Jets stay healthy, I think the Jets defense gave Allen a lot of trouble in week 1 last year, and I think it'll continue. Um, and if Rodgers stays healthy, I think the Jets will edge them out in the division. I think the Bills will probably finish at like 11-6 or so. But yeah, that's my outlook for them.
Okay. Then that goes back finally to Miami, and we all know what happened to Miami last year. Um, they went into play Kansas City, probably one of the coldest nights, and they got absolutely demolished by Kansas City. They had no hope. Once the game was in Kansas City, the high flying Miami offense couldn't do anything, and even though they made the playoffs, um, they really haven't done much lately, honestly. So, what do you think about um, Tua and the Dolphins?
Yeah, I think they'll be slightly below the Bills again. I think I have them at 9 wins, maybe 8 wins, depending on where their games are played and honestly what the temperature is and how good Tua is. I think Tyreek's going to be always be the game threat, game changer. Jalen Waddle is still very good. They have Mostert and Achane behind in the backfield. I think it's just a question of how effective Tua is, and he kind of crumbled there against Kansas City at the end. So I think if they're able to um, really keep that offense going, I think Tua needs to learn how to protect the ball a little more. But I think if Tua can stand upright, the offensive line can protect him. I think they can get to 9 wins. I think they're just not good enough to compete with the Bills and the Jets right now because Tua, unfortunately, is not as good as Josh Allen and he's not as good as Aaron Rodgers. And although he has two of the better weapons in the division, I just don't think he as a quarterback is refined enough to compete with Allen and Rodgers. So I think they're just going to be playing second, maybe third fiddle to those two at the top of the conference. It's kind of crazy to think about because in the Brady days, it would always be Pats at the top. Jets would be at the bottom every single year. And it was just Miami and Buffalo fighting for who could maybe have a winning record. And now we know the Pats are going to be really bad. So it's a kind of a 3-team race at the top.
Yeah, I I think both of them were 11-6 last year, both Buffalo and Miami, and I think you said Jets was 7, and then Patriots 4. So we said Patriots with four, anywhere between 4 to 6 wins, I
I
think.
think they'll be 2-4. I don't think they're going to be that good.
Okay, all right, okay, and then the Dolphins.
7 to 9 wins. I think. I think they'll be. I think if Rodgers stays healthy, that's 4 games that they have to play against Buffalo and New York.
Okay,
So I don't think. I think they're going to lose at least 2 of those.
Okay, so Dolphins, you're thinking there'll be like
8 to 9 wins.
8 to 9 wins. Okay, so 9-8. We'll put at 9-8. I think that's your cap, which will be a 2 game under last year's. And then,
But last year they didn't have to deal with Rodgers.
so you think between Buffalo and the Jets, you think the Jets are going to win the division?
I think the Jets are going to win the division. If Rodgers stays healthy with that defense, yeah.
Okay.
And Garrett Wilson.
And Garrett, yeah. So yeah, that's fair. I actually like those picks, and I was actually going to put. I don't know. Even though the Jets, in my mind, are a better team than Buffalo, I think Josh would actually keep them in most of these games. Um, and and I do think it's going to be a flip between Buffalo and Jets, and I'm going to give the slight edge to Buffalo again, followed by the Jets, then the Dolphins, and the Patriots. And again, it could easily, but again, who knows if the Patriots can actually surprise. So this was good, Anish, but any one thing I did want to go back to the Patriots again and see who would be the breakout player for the Patriots this year, whatever their record is.
I think the breakout player for me, I'll go one offense, one defense. I think offensively, I'm going to go with Jalen Polk. I think he had a really good camp. He looked good in the preseason. He had a couple good routes and catches from Drake Maye. I think defensively, I'm looking for Christian Gonzalez to break out. He had a great start to last year. He played really good defense against A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill, two of the top receivers in the league. And then he got hurt against the Jets in week 3, which unfortunately ended his rookie campaign. So I think if Gonzalez can stay healthy, he played really good last year. And I think he can kind of be that lockdown number 1 corner. I want to see if he can. So I think I'm looking for Gonzalez to kind of break out.
Okay. I actually think, despite the fact that I don't know what the Patriots offense is going to do, I think Polk is going to be my player, surprise player, or a breakout player for the Patriots. And I look forward to him producing. I mean, and I think if May is back with a healthy offensive line, I think they can do both with Baker. I know Baker did drop a few passes during the preseason, but I feel that if they can establish that, and Tyquan Thornton was put on a little more weight, and then he's definitely their ex receiver, I think they could be a good three-headed wide receiver group that would really help. And of course, we can never forget the tight ends with Hunter Henry, and I think this Austin Hooper is also there. So that's good, Anish. This was a fun thing, but let's see what happens. We'll be watching game by game. And thank you for your insights. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Primo will be back soon.